Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Today is Tuesday, June 7, 2022. Welcome to the Boardwalk County Commission meeting. Thank you for being such a great audience. Usually it's not as quiet the first few minutes, so thank you for being here this morning. If we could please invite Pastor David Ferry up here for the New Life Assembly of God of Church from Lehigh Acres for their invocation. After that, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance also.
Good morning. Will you bow your heads as I pray? Dear wise and loving Father, thank you. Thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings, and thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in this useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you for loving us, love that comes from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that the citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this meeting today. I am asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to handle every topic that will be discussed today, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and be most beneficial to those who live and work in and around this city. It is in your most blessed name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could ask everyone to silence their phones also during the meeting. Good morning. We have a lot of good things going on this week in Lee County. I'd like to recognize a few things. First of all, I'd like to recognize any of our World War II veterans and members of our service. Yesterday was D-Day, the day that was moved down in history, on July 6, 1944, and the Allies and Americans stormed Normandy. So thank you to any veterans that may be here, or the family members like myself that are members of the World War II veterans. And also, I'd like to recognize also the FSW girls softball team. They won the second straight year the National Junior College Community College Championship. So a big round of applause for the FSW. And I also like to recognize a special day last week. Commissioner Mann and his little girlfriend, sweetheart wife, Mary Lee, celebrated their 61st anniversary last week. So. And in today's world, that's definitely got to be recognized. So bravo to yourself and Mary Lee for 61 wonderful years. You guys made a beautiful family, and thank you for everything you've done for Lee County, Commissioner Mann.
Did my best.
Yes, you did. You're not done yet, sir. Yes, you are. Next, we have Chase is here this morning. Chase is here from Animal Services with Karen and Pablo, and I would like to recognize our Pet of the Month, and would like to, if anybody would like to adopt Chase. If you know anybody out there looking for a great pet for either dog or cat, we even get some other rabbits and other things in our animal services. We have great services, and it's really cheap to adopt an animal. So please give them a home. We have a few down there. Karen, any programs going on this month or anything going into the summer?
Yes, June is National Foster Month. So Saturday, June 25th, we have a foster open house. So come on out. You can meet whoever you would like to foster, become a foster with us. We have a great new foster program for dogs. If you're interested in fostering any of our dogs on the adoption floor, give them a break for the weekend. Chase is available for $20 this month. We have just waived all fees for cats and kittens for the rest of June because we have 175 in-house. So come on out and adopt or foster cats or kittens. It is kitten season. So yeah, stop on by. We'll have one for everybody in the room today on the way out the door.
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you for all your staff, everything you do for the animals and everything. So I'm sure you'll find some good homes for them. So thank you again. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you.
You too, Chase.
Good luck.
Really a well-mannered dog this morning. Also like to recognize, there's not many of them here because most of them are still in Orlando, is this week we have the IPDW conference in Orlando. And we have the TDC VCB is actually currently, as we're speaking this morning, I just came back from Orlando. I'll be returning there later today. We have the current yearly IPDW conference. It's a worldwide conference, and I'd like to thank all the TDC VCC staff that are still there that prepared this, and all the ones here still working to bring tourism here to Lee County. So Tamara and her staff does a great job there. Next, we have a resolution I'd like to read, and if I could have the calendar girls come up. We have Catherine and Donna in the group. I think we have some calendar girls here in the audience this morning. If you could just come up to the podium here, I have a resolution to read, and just stay right there, and I'll read, and we'll come up and get a picture, and perfect for the D-Day. You get the uniforms and everything. Great, thank you. The resolution reads as, whereas the Calendar Girls are an award-winning and not-for-profit charity dance team consulting on women aged 50 and older, and whereas the Calendar Girls have created the dance team in 2006, Love to Dance, and spread the joy of dancing for other not-for-profit organizations, nursing homes, parades, and banquets. And whereas the Calendar Girls, through the performances, are able to reach out to the community in a way that brings smiles and fun and often quiet days. And whereas the Calendar Girls have recently performed at the Fort Myers Film Festival doing the premiere documentary Calendar Girls. And whereas the Calendar Girls' primary charity is sponsoring Southeastern guide dogs for local veterans. Thank you for doing that. And whereas the Calendar Girls has sponsored 26 Southeastern guide dog veterans, including guide dog number 26, Blaine, for his beloved local Navy veteran, Blaine Elmer. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida does recognize the Calendar Girls for all their work they threw out to the community, duly executed the 7th day of June, 2022. Signed by myself. Thank you. Come on up, please, and here you go. Thank you. If you all just get right here and just kind of get lined up here, kind of narrow here in the middle, and we'll get a picture together.
Fine.
Got it?
Yeah.
We'll come in the middle.
Yeah.
You got it?
Mr. Manny, you got these ladies. You got to get your picture. You can look.
They inspired me.
Is that Blaine here this morning?
Blaine?
Okay. Oh, he did.
What?
Okay. The dog? Yeah.
Morning. All right, and everybody,
Oh,
1,
upstairs.
2, and 3. And one more. 1, 2, and 3.
Great. And thank you. Would anybody from the group like to say anything real quick? Just go to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you. And on behalf of my Calendar Girls sisters, we are honored and humbled to receive this proclamation today. But it's just mere words that I'm uttering. We will continue our hard work and our commitment to this community, and we are grateful for the support that we have received from the residents of Lee County. Everything that we do is focused on supporting the needs of disabled military veterans through the Southeastern Guide Dog School. So again, we thank you and we appreciate that, and we are very blessed to have this honor today.
Thank you again for your support. Thank you for everything you do in our community. Next is Commissioner Wayne. You have a resolution to read.
I do. We're proud and excited that Lee County was selected to host this year's FHSAA Baseball State Championships at Hammond Stadium, and even more excited that our local team brought home the trophy. Attendees here, if you all come on up, and anyone that I didn't mention that was part of it, please do so. Dr. Christopher Bernia, Dr. Michelle Court, Michael Auer, Michael Double D, Clint Montgomery, and any other staff or any other players. Anybody here? Come on up.
Well, Christopher, since you came up, I can recognize you if I could, Commissioner Wayne. This is, if you don't, everybody doesn't recognize this is Christopher Berner, the new superintendent from Orlando. Well, actually Vegas, I'm sorry. This came to Lee County, so congratulations again on your job, and we welcome you here in Lee County. So, and you see some great product here at Lee County Schools. Yes.
Good-looking team.
So it's I'm just going to read this, so we'll take a picture, and then somebody can say a few words. Thank you very much. So resolution, whereas the Island Coast High School baseball team captured the Florida High School State Athletic Association 4A state championships, bring home the prestigious title to Lee County and the community, and whereas the entire student body and gated community enthusiastically encouraged the team and its coaches to compile a season with win-loss record of 24-7, whereas head coach Clinton Montgomery, athletic director Michael Doubleday, principal Dr. Michelle Court rallied the team to win the state championships in extra innings on May 24th, 2022. And whereas the dedicated coaches and parents and fans of the Island Coast Gators and should be recognized for the time and the commitment for excellence and allow these young men and coaches to perform like champions. And whereas this championship season will be part of Lee County sports history forever, as Island Coast Home became the first Lee County public school to ever win a state title. Now, therefore, it's resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida, wishes to congratulate the 2021-2022 Island Coast High School baseball team and all the Island Coast Gators for their commitment to the sport in baseball, education, the pride of this community. Furthermore, the board would also like to recognize the team, coaches, parents, school administrators, faculty, and entire student body of the Island Coast High School for helping to bring this prestigious state championships to Lee County. It's signed by our chairman, Cecil Pendergrass, June 7th.
Congratulations.
Coach? Coach? You the coach? You the coach?
Yes, sir.
Here you go. Feel free to take a photo with us.
Let's get her to put a peephole.
Chris, you got a great team here.
Got it.
They're doing pictures upstairs.
Yeah, I can see. Oh, now I can't.
We got the official one up on the balcony there.
Great, thank you. We want the coaches, the superintendent like to address the board.
Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations, guys. Well done.
You know, Kyle is one of my neighbors. Really? Oh, yeah. Yeah, love him. Where is he at today?
We're saying
Oh.
When we started this season and started into the playoffs and we're starting to make a run and we got closer to a state title and you could start to feel the state title, never in my wildest dreams did we look at it as doing it for the whole community. It was about the school, it was about the players and the people in that locker room. And then right before the state title game, one of the reporters interviewed me and said, what's the pressure of being the first team in 100 years of Lee County to have a chance to win a state title? And I was like, there is no pressure. I didn't even know that existed. So I said, our goal is just to win. But now that we won and we have found out the history of this title and the 100-year drought in Lee County and how special it is as a team, I think we all just feel humbled and blessed as a group, and we know how very important this is and how meaningful it is, and we just want to, as a group, we want to thank God. We want to thank our families for all the support that they gave us through the way, and we also want to thank our military, past and present, because of all the teams in Lee County. This team knows our freedom isn't free. And we hope over the next few years that we represent, not that just that we won the title, that we represent the title in Lee County the best we can. So we accept the resolution, I guess you'd call it. And thank you guys very much for having us.
Thank you. Okay.
It's a good group.
Give me 1 second, guys. Trying to label these cards here. Them clear out? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the recap. The first items we're going to keep that on the agenda now, the public hearing 5. We're going to deal with that later. We have a revision and corrections for A2. If I could get a motion and a second for the corrections and revisions.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion second. Any public comment on the corrections and revisions for A2 from the recap? Come back to the board. Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. We can move the consent items be pulled by discussion of the board. Commissioner Mann, any items be pulled by the
Thank you.
Don, Commissioner Mann? Commissioner Hammond?
I have none.
No? Commissioner Rain?
Do 28.
Number 28? Okay, we will pull number 28. This time we'll take a motion for the balance of the items.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion second. Any public comments on the consent agenda other than item 28? Please come forward if you have a public comment on any item other than 28. Are you Linda Russell? I am. Okay, good. I have your card here for number 27. Go right ahead.
Oh, was I supposed to only speak on 28?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I'm Linda Russell, and I live in Lehigh Acres. And so I'm concerned about Lehigh Acres. So my question is on number 27. We have this compost facility, and I was just wondering where the location is of this facility, because I'm just concerned about the composting that we've had troubles with in the past, that it burns. Could you tell me the location? Or later?
We don't have dialogue at the dais like this. We'll have staff meet with you after you're speaking to give you that information. But this is your time to tell us what you're concerned about.
Yeah, that's my concern, is I don't want Lehigh Acres to be a dumping ground, so I don't want composting or refuse to continue to expand here for the rest of the county. That's my concern. And then I have one for the administrative agenda, but do I wait?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Great, thank you. And staff, if somebody could meet with Linda and give her the information she's looking for number 27. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead, Lee County Solid Waste. The composting facility is located at the Hendry County landfill in Hendry County, which we administer. It's been there for approximately 15 years and will continue to stay there.
Great, thank you. Linda, did you hear that? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other public comment on the consent agenda other than item 28? If you, John, please come forward. Willie Joe.
Accepting DCF grant money for the homeless services. I've came here a long time, and I've met with Human Services, Roger, and about these grant monies to being dispersed to the nonprofits. And unfortunately, we're not connecting. I've asked the fellow advocates that he's given the card to, if he's got back to them, and nothing. So we need to solve this. We need people off the streets. We got more people maybe becoming homeless. I was at the city meeting, the Yacht Basin. They're worried about themselves becoming homeless. Let's work together. Let's get some solutions. Let's rehab some buildings and utilize that money so we have something that this isn't going to happen 50 years from now. There isn't homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on the consent agenda other than item number 28? We'll close public comment, come back to the board for a motion for the balance, and we have a motion. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Item 28, Commissioner Wayne.
Is anyone here from the vendor?
Yes, we have a card from Bill Jones here from Waste Pro.
Okay. Is he here? Yes. Come up, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
I live in the Cape.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I am struggling with this contract due to the service in the Cape. As the Commissioner covers that, I've been to the last 4 or 5 places where I've spoken to, The constant theme is the challenges you all have in Cape Coral. I live in the Cape. I can tell you on both hands, and then some times where my garbage wasn't picked up, recycling was, garbage wasn't, vice versa. So I'm struggling with the challenge you have in the Cape, and now you're going to go into one of the most challenging districts around, and how you're going to accomplish that, because I don't see any improvement in the Cape. And although this isn't about the Cape, when you're stretched, I just wonder how much capacity y'all have.
Sure. So, and I think those are valid concerns. You know, we've had struggles in Cape Coral. There's no questions about it. Our industry overall has struggled since COVID, really, right? You know, prior to COVID, service was fine. Service wasn't an issue really anywhere. And we see it now, not just in our industry, but in other trucking industries and other service industries. So it's really just a nationwide issue right now, probably worldwide, but certainly nationwide. In terms of, you know, how we've recovered from that, I think we've learned how to navigate in this new world. Going back to prior to the pandemic, you know, we would get 4 or 5 calls a day, concerns from Cape Coral residents, any type of concern, right? So we don't say, oh, it's your fault, it's our fault. If you have a concern, you have a concern. It's gone up since COVID hit, and certainly at the peak of COVID, it was at its worst. Most recently, in the month of May, I think we had a total of 379 calls that came in that were of some concern, missed garbage, missed bulk, missed something. We don't know, you know, again, we don't know if it's late set out or whatever, we just take the concern and we handle it. We do 84,000 plus or minus services. I mean, that's a very small percentage overall when you look at it that way. I think most of what we have seen in Cape Coral has been related to the recovery from the pandemic. Getting qualified drivers has been a continued struggle, training those drivers. And a city like Cape Coral, particularly in the northern section of Cape Coral, where you're adding 200 homes a month, and you have a street that had no homes on it last week that suddenly has 2 homes this week, that's another challenge, right? So I think those are really some of the main reasons. We've seen marked improvement, I think, in Cape Coral since the pandemic hit. We're not at the level we were at pre-pandemic. I'll be perfectly, you know, honest with you on that. I'm not sure when we get back to that level. I mean, it's such a different world we're in today. But in terms of service in Lee County, overall our service level's fine. We've had, speaking to the, you know, being stretched thin concern, you know, we've had some startups recently that we've done very well in. We started up Collier County's District 2, which is the eastern portion of the county. We started that up last October. I think if you talk to folks out there, they'll tell you that it was seamless. The only difference is a different, you know, name on the truck, really. Service has improved, I think, out there since we took it over. We did a same-day reroute where we rerouted all of North Fort Myers Area 5 last year at the end of the year. Again, great results there, very few concerns, very few complaints from residents. Just recently, we did a similar reroute in Area 3, which is South Fort Myers, Estero, San Carlos area. Again, hardly any complaints at the end of the day. We had some. Of course, people were confused or our drivers turned the wrong way or whatever. But service really has been fine in all of those transitions. I don't see this one as being any different. We're very familiar with Area 4. Our Chief Operating Officer, Keith Benajak, actually lives in Lee County, and he at one point managed the Area 4 contract years and years ago. He managed that contract. So he's familiar with it. Our safety manager actually used to work for a company that ran that contract about 10 years ago, so he's familiar with it. Really, the biggest challenges we see there are backdowns. There's about 1,100 backdowns. We have equipment that we've spec'd for this that does really well with backdowns. You can service both sides of the street, so you only have to go down once instead of twice. So I think that's an improvement. The other challenge I think that we see in Area 4 that's somewhat unique, and actually Cape has a similar issue, but it's somewhat unique, is that it has automated service currently. That leads to a lot of confusion for folks, right? So the truck comes down, picks up your cart, but that same truck may not be able to pick up the mattress. So they immediately think something's wrong. So they'll call in. They'll be concerned, right? They'll post on Facebook, whatever it happens to be. With the trucks that we've spec'd, those trucks will pick up everything. So if it's your garbage truck, it picks up all of your garbage, including your mattress. If it's your recycling truck, it picks up all of your recyclables, including the cardboard that's on the outside. So there should be a little bit less confusion from that standpoint. At least that's our hope, that's our belief. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but we believe that we are more than prepared to handle this. We're the largest residential service provider in the state of Florida, and we believe that we are more than prepared to handle this contract.
Yeah, my only overall concern, and I appreciate your comments, is adding on another 44,000 units when you're struggling in 84. And by the way, I live in the southern part of the Cape. I can't tell you the number of times where my recycling has picked up what's in the can, but the boxes are left, and it could be days. Or you'll pick up my garbage, and it could be days before you pick up my recycling. No rhyme or reason. I'm concerned about the summer. I'm concerned about the heat. Animals now getting in garbages because people are overflowed. You haven't come. You know, it's just what I'm hearing from my community. I want to make sure you're aware of it.
I appreciate
And as we put on more capacity for you, maybe the way I look at it is more capacity is even more challenges, not less challenges. So again, I just struggle, and I appreciate your comments. I appreciate some of the things you addressed with Section 4, the uniqueness, and some of the ways you're going to deal with that, but I do appreciate it. Thank you.
And one of the things I probably should have mentioned, Commissioner, is that the Area 4 services will be a completely separate facility from the facility that services Cape Coral. It's going to be located in Area 4, so it's a separate office, just so you understand.
I can't imagine the pandemic's selective about how it impacts companies.
It's not. I wish it was, but it's not. Yeah.
I had a question, Bill. Thank you, and thank you for the information. I live in Gateway, and I have great service from your company over the years, and I know in the past we struggled here. Years ago, we had Progressive and some other companies where we still get complaints from other companies, either Advance or Progressive or whatever it may, Waste Management. But what are you doing right now as far as recruiting new people to fill these spots for these new positions?
So we're doing a couple of things, Commissioner. We are having actually our first job fair related to this contract is this Saturday, already scheduled. Press release will go out later today, hopefully, or early tomorrow to get some folks kind of jazzed up about coming in to talk to us. We're also reaching out to current employees of Waste Management, the current vendor, to see if they'd like to stay in town. So that's going to happen later on. So we've got a couple of different things we're doing. The job fairs we're going to have scheduled frequently between now and September. Our goal is to get people on board early and have them training at our facility in Fort Myers and then transition them over to the new facility in Lehigh.
Does anybody else have any question before I call staff up to address the item, or before Bill, before he sits down? Because he did a card also to speak to, so. Any other questions? No? Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Roger or Doug, did you want to introduce the item? And
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead, Lee County Solid Waste. So in late last year, we tried to work with the incumbent Waste Management to extend the contract. Right after Christmas, they gave us a price in the high 20s, which would have been a 100% price increase. At that point in time, we'd already been working on a RFP, and we put the RFP out to bid. There was a committee that met and reviewed all the proposals, and the committee decided that Waste Pro had the best proposal based upon their service record with us, which as a county is excellent. Also, the type of trucks they were going to use, their experience, and price. So after that, we negotiated with them, and their price is going to be $21.45 at this time. $21.45 is quite a bit lower than the 27 plus that was offered by Waste Management during the extension.
great. Thank you. Any comments or questions for staff?
Just one last question, and it relates to, you know, I get a chance to serve the other half of Cape Coral and live in Cape Coral myself as well, and have Waste Pro service. But when we talked yesterday about this item coming up on the agenda, you mentioned the service with Waste Pro and the number of complaints that we get relative to other vendors and things like that. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. Waste Pro has approximately 45% of all the services right now in the county, but we only get about 15% of our complaints are coming from the Waste Pro areas. The incumbent Waste Management just isn't providing the service that we expect. And I would also add is that there are companies, all the companies that proposed have had service issues with one exception, which has no track record over the past 3 years of providing service anywhere. So, but their service has been very good for us. We have a very rigorous contract that they know that we enforce, and also we have very active inspectors who are out on the street every day, working with them to provide service, and if necessary, we have fined both entities in the past. But their service has been very good for us.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Great. Okay, we'll come back to the board. Any public comment? Bill, do you wish to address the board again? I have a card for Bill Jones.
Yes, sir, Commissioners. I didn't turn the card in. I didn't know exactly how this was going to go. Danny Ballard, North Fort Myers. Kevin, I understand your concern. I've never had a garbage issue, but I have had recycling issues numerous times. And you'd call out there, and they told me, well, you're not getting it out early enough. I've put it out the night before, and I don't know if that's still not early enough when you put it out. And some weeks they'll hit it, some weeks they don't get it. And you call out there, well, we'll get it. Well, and I understand what you're saying. It could be 2 to 3 days before the recycler is emptied. So my biggest concern is recycler. If Commissioner Ruane's got a problem and I got a problem, I guarantee you there's others. So that's my biggest problem.
Thank you. Bill Jones, did you wish to speak again on the item? Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on item 28? We'll come back to the board for a motion or...
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the staff recommendation based on the information that's been presented to us, both the committee's recommendation and the evidence related to service reliability here today. So.
We have a motion. I'll second that. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Thank you. Administrative item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number 1 is to approve an agreement with Bliss Nitrate for Boardwalk repairs at Hammond Stadium. And Mr. Harner, will you please present the item?
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, Commissioners. As Roger said, this item is to enter an agreement with Bliss Nitrate. They have agreed to pay for all remediation of the boardwalk. At the same time, along with this motion, we are asking Bliss Nitrate to put on a protective coating on the boardwalk once the remediation is done. That has been factored into the Parks and Rec budget. It was anticipated and included in the budget. This work will take roughly 12 weeks and will begin sometime late July, early August.
Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments for staff before we call public comment? Okay, we'll call public comment. Administrative.
Somebody's got their hand up for public comment.
Public comment, administrative item 1, please come forward. I have several cards, but people did not list what item they were here for. This Norm Cannon turned the card in, did not list the number. And Linda Russell, you said number 1. So this is item 1. Yes, come forward.
So again, this is administrative agenda, county manager number 1, and it has to do with the boardwalk, just Hammond Stadium in general. So this is in Parks and Recreation, I'm assuming. Do we know how much money we gain to the county from this Hammond Stadium?
So we do not take dialogue at the podium.
Okay,
this is your time to speak to about the item on the agenda. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public comment, item 1. Norman Cannon gave a card, but no number listed. Norman, are you here? Do you wish to speak on this item or not? No? Okay. You didn't list the number, just making sure. We'll come back to the board for a motion or a second.
Move the item.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments, any discussion, any objection? No objection, motion carries. Number 2.
Oh, excuse me.
Roger.
I'm with you now. Thank you, Commissioner. Administrative item number 2, we are asking you to approve today an adjustment and adopt a resolution for revisions to the county's personnel policies 401, sick leave, 402, vacation leave, and approve a motion to authorize and implement salary pay plan adjustments. Commissioners, it's no secret that everyone is feeling the pressure of inflation. It affects all of our businesses. For example, our road construction projects right now are costing a little more than 25% more than they did a year ago at this time. And that's pretty indicative of the kinds of increases we're feeling. Employees, just like everyone else, are dealing with the increase in the consumer price index. What's interesting about the CPI is that in the aggregate, it's about an 8.3% year-over-year increase in the cost of living. However, as you know, the consumer price index is made up of many different categories. And so the categories that affect all of our employees and everyone else are things like the cost of gasoline. Gasoline is up 43%. Used cars are up 23%. Food over 15%. And the list goes on and on. It has become almost impossible. Oh, and the real estate market. We all know what's happened with the cost of rent and the cost to purchase homes. And a lot of people are really struggling. So what we're asking you today to do primarily is to adjust the salary schedule. You have before you a spreadsheet which shows that at all employees at $52,440 and below, which accounts for 1,585 employees of our 2,600, would receive a 10% increase in their pay. And as the pay grade goes higher, it is the percent increase is graduated to a lower rate of ultimately 3%. So the breakdowns are at 8, 7, 5.5, 4.5, 3.5, and then 3 finally. The reason we did it that way is because it is the people below that are making less than $52,000 are the ones that need the money the most. And so that's why we asked for the higher percentage for that group of employees. And then reduced by percentage for everyone thereafter. So that's what we're asking of you today, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for you and your staff. We've been talking about this for a few months, and I've been saying for years about doing a spread as far as like the distribution of the amount of increases instead of a flat percent, because we're, the people that needs it. So thank you for taking that. And the best part about this whole project you brought forward here, it doesn't have a merit raise. So it's non-discriminatory. You're not being selective. You're not being selective like you will see in some other areas of the counties, the cities, where they do a merit raise, was based upon supervisory discretionary. So thank you for not including that. So that's a good thing. Commissioner Wayne?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I certainly sat down with staff, saw a original proposal, and thought this would be more equitable. We have talked openly about making sure we address the people that obviously are paid the least and make sure they get the best beneficiary. I've also been in government, maybe not in this government, longer than most, except Frank. I've seen the downturn. And during the downturn, I use an analogy and used an analogy when I governed over in Sanibel. 2007 was some tough times. The pendulum needs to swing both ways. The pendulum during the 07, 08, 09, I had no ability to give anyone a raise whatsoever. I realized that salaries during those times, didn't move at all. And for 7 years, when I governed on Sanibel, we didn't have the ability, because of negative real estate values, to do anything. The pendulum swung the other way. And I'm not saying it's going to be as fruitful as it is today. I mean, there are some troubles ahead. I don't know if it's next year or the following year, but what my suggestion was to do this, it's much more equitable in this regard, and certainly looked at the 2 charts we had. The most recent one is much more equitable. It's a few $100,000 more. But looking at our reserves, looking at the revenue that's coming in from sales tax, looking at what ad valorem taxes came in, I just thought it was indicative we do this. And this is just a salary adjustment. It has nothing to do with anything else. So I want to deal with this item, but I do want to come back to a second item. And I do want to, from a public perception point of view, and really from a planning point of view, is want to lock in a COLA as well. So these are 2 issues. I'm addressing a salary, and then I want to look at a COLA, because this is long overdue for the people that obviously were not able, and we weren't able to, and I know the county was not immune from the recession, 07, 08, 09. Weren't able to do something. I want to do this, but I also want to do a COLA as well. So I don't want to convolute this situation. The other thing I want to do is have consistency within the organizations. We employ people in the sheriff's office, from the Port Authority. I need to have consistency through the entire group, because somebody that works in this area or that area shouldn't get paid differently because they work in a different entity. It's the county. You work for the county. And I want to have consistency throughout. Chairman, you mentioned the merit idea. I mean, I watched it in Sanibel, and as large of an organization we have, I think it becomes problematic. It's great in theory, it just becomes more problematic. So what I'm going to make a motion to do is, and I'm going to come back to this, is to adopt this as is, to have consistency throughout the organization, and make sure that we just do this as a pay adjustment, not a COLA increase. And that'll be my motion.
I'll second the motion. So the motion is to, just to restate it so I know, is to basically approve the staff recommendation as presented for item number 2.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'll second that motion, absolutely.
Is the second part of it convening of the Port Authority?
Well, I'm going to do that. You know, I have 3 parts of this. If I keep them separate, is that okay?
Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of clarity, that is the item as shown on the recap A2.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second?
Yeah,
Any other
Mr.
comments?
Chairman, I'll just add just some comments too on, you know, I appreciate the proposal here. When I got a chance to, I was initially briefed on the staff's initial proposal, which had the scaling and the pay scales and different pay grades and things like that. And I thought that was good work, but when the recap came out yesterday and got a chance to see this, I thought this was even better work. It was, you know, when we think about who's getting hurt the most right now, it really is the people who are making, you know, $50,000 or less a year. I mean, costs, rent, everything is just going up like crazy, and they just don't have the ability to keep up with it right now. And so when you look at the fact that we've got 1,585 employees, so this is almost 1,600 people that make less than $52,000 a year here at the county, and we're going to be able to give them an increase that helps keep pace with inflation. And honestly, I know what they report on the news, that inflation is like 8%. I got to tell you, you look at gas prices, you look at food, it's higher than that. It really is higher than what's being reported in the media right now. And so I've said this as I've talked to other employers when they talk to me about affordable housing and the fact that rents are getting out of control. I've said, well, if you've got employees that are really important, and you're telling me that those employees can't afford to live here anymore, then we need to look at paying them more. You need to look at paying them more too. And so this is a chance for us to lead by example and to help pay those that are making the lower end of our wages better, so that they can hopefully continue to work for us, because they are very valuable employees. They do important work for us, for our citizens. And so that's why I'm supporting this motion.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, Commissioner Hammond. This was something we did in my company, as I employ over 500 people, so I'm trying to address the salary, not a grade. I didn't want to discriminate in grades, because if you were in a particular grade and you made the same amount of money, I want to make sure we address that. So I thought this was a little bit better. It's a few $100,000 more, and I'm not trying to dismiss that. I just think it's more equitable.
Thank you. Any other comments before we call public comment? This time, any public comment, Administrator, item number 2. We'll come back to the board. We have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I do have 2 more things to do.
Okay, go ahead.
So then the next item I'd like to do is direct staff, as far as our budget process for October, that they do in their workup a 5% COLA.
That's a motion then?
That's a motion, correct.
Or 5% COLA for October 1st of this year?
Correct.
Could I second the motion for discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll second the motion so that we can discuss it real quickly. So in the past, when we've done the budget here, I love our budget process here. We've gotten a chance to look at multiple options during our workshops at what this option would cost and that option would cost and things like that. And we do typically have the salary adjustments kind of towards the end as one of those last outstanding items when we vote on the budget. I have no problem with us putting the 5% adjustment in there as an option, but I'm not ready to commit to that yet. This is a really generous increase that we just gave here, starting at 10% for our employees. And this is going to start immediately, too, which is really amazing, because it's going to deliver help right now, not just on October 1st. So I'm happy to see it as an option when we look at all the different budget options. I'm just not committed to it yet 100%, in light of, I mean, the very generous increases that we just gave.
I mean, I certainly understand the discussions we have relative to the budget. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration. I look at these as two separate items. I look at the salary adjustment as an opportunity to address things that took place. People have been here a long time. They went through 07, 08, 09, 010, 11, 12. You look at 7 years at 2%, that's 14%. You look at seven years at 3%, that's 21%. So their salaries were compressed for those period of time. This that we adopted is to address that. The COLA, in my mind, and I agree with you, Commissioner Hammond, it's a discussion during budgets. I just wanted to give staff clear direction right now to at least consider that in all our figures, because we're going to talk about reserves, we're going to talk about projects, we're going to talk about all the different aspects. And you're right, you want to see it all come out. I did ask staff a handful of questions relative to the budget, made sure I had Pamela send it out to you all and asked you not to comment, but again, it's just for edification purposes. That's it. But that's my motion, and again, I just want for the record, they're two separate items in my view, and we can have this discussion during the budget.
So it'll be part of the budget process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do we have a second on that? Any public comment on that motion? We'll come back to the board for any other discussions on the motion. Any objections? Objection? Motion.
We have one objection.
Commissioner Mann? You object? Okay. So it passes 3-1. Okay, thank you. You have a third one?
I do. County Attorney, you could help us here, but I believe we need to convene as the Port Commissioners.
Yes. So this time we will convene as a Port Commission from the Port Authority this time. Okay.
Again, I appreciate the discussion. I think it's equally important that the increase that we did, we're consistent through our organizations. So I wanted to meet as the Port of Commissioners to make sure there's no disparities. I don't want to have someone in finance in the Port Authority make different than someone in finance because they're, you know, they work for a different entity. We're one unit. We're operating. I understand the revenue streams, but I don't want to have any type of inconsistencies, whether it's finance, whether it's police officers, whatever the case, whether it's clerks. I didn't want to do that, so I just thought we'd have consistency throughout our organization. So using this 8.5, we would give at our next meeting with the Board of County Commissioners, Port Commissioners, we'd give direction to staff, but I wanted them to know, you know, that we were going to have consistencies throughout the organization. I think that's essential, and that's my motion.
So the motion is to ask the Port Authority staff and administration to work this up for us to vote on at our next Port Authority meeting as we put that budget together. I'll second that motion.
Does the motion include a merit raise or does not include a merit? Because they currently use a merit system for their payroll.
So the issue I'm struggling with, and we could have more of a dialogue there, is I'm struggling with this whole merit concept. I'd rather, I know we gave them the parameters to do so, but I think as we're expanding different units, 1826 indicated they didn't want to merit. I know the Port Authority Police have now gone to FOP. I'm going to suspect they're not going to want it. So less and less people in the organization are going to want to be part of the merit. I'm now scratching my head as someone that was in favor of the merit. I'm not necessarily as thrilled about it as I was a year ago. So I know we had direction on merit. I know we had direction on COLA. I certainly am not going to be voting next meeting for any type of merit. I'd rather just do a COLA.
Could the motion maker adopt his motion to include no merit raises? And the seconder would like to agree to that or not?
Well, I did it in three pieces the last time. I wanted to convene as a Port Authority. I wanted to pass the consistency in a pay scale adjustment based on that. That was going to be my first motion. I plan on doing this in three parts like I did for the prior one. So my first motion is to have the Port Authority utilize the same pay scale adjustment for the Port Authority. That's my first motion, based consistent with what we have passed for the Board of County Commissioners.
Richard, do you have a question or comment?
Mr. Chairman, to the motion maker, if I may, just to clarify, your motion would be of immediate effect.
Correct.
With regard to the Port Authority, just as it was for the board's employees.
Consistent
Sitting as the Port
throughout,
Authority.
yes. Thank you for the clarity.
So would that include their current practice of a merit raise based upon supervision approval? Or would it be the same as under the county manager's form of government now where there's a pay raise based upon people's tenure?
The
The motion maker has only, for the motion, is only about salary adjustment, and I'm not going to talk about COLA or merit until my next motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a second. Any public comment on that motion for the Port Authority? And I see Ben's here this morning. Ben, if you need to address this or anything, would like to comment, please let us know. I didn't see you till a few months ago you're actually here when I was looking at Richard, so thank you. Okay.
One question.
Yes.
So
Commissioner Hammond?
just my question, just to, again, get everything clear then. So are we actually then adopting this today as the new salary adjustment? Just like so when we just passed this for the Board of County Commissioners, as a Board of County Commissioners, we actually just passed this and it went into effect today. So this will be on, I guess, an upcoming pay period or paycheck for our employees at the county. Is the motion to go ahead and adopt this today for the Port Authority employees, and this will be on their upcoming paycheck as well then?
Yes, to have consistency through the organizations, I think it's essential we follow the same protocol.
Okay, I'll second that. I agree, and that's my second then too, and I think that's the appropriate way to handle this. I think there's always safety when you treat, even though we wear different hats as a Port Commissioner or a Board of County Commissioners, if we treat the employees equally across the organizations, I think there's always safety in that, and so I agree with that and happy to support that today.
Thank you. Thank you. Any public comment on that motion? A second. Okay, we'll come back to the board. Any other discussion? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you.
I have another motion.
Next motion.
So, again, consistent with what we did with the COLA for budgeting purposes, I certainly would like to direct the Port Authority Executive Director to do a 5% COLA in the budget discussions we're going to have. I am not in favor of doing a merit.
Okay, so that would be, the motion would be a 5%, come back with a 5% increase.
Oh, just for budget discussions.
For
but
budget
just for
discussion
this
without a merit.
commissioner, I am not in favor of merit. I want to have consistency through organizations, and I think as we start to have more and more fractions that don't want to participate in a COLA and don't want to participate in a merit, I don't think it's as useful and helpful. It actually makes it a little bit more convoluted. That's my opinion.
And just before I second it, just want to make sure I understand it. So again, this is just a proposal for our future budget discussion at the Port Authority. 5% could be proposed as an option.
Correct.
Not committing to it because of what we just passed today.
Consistent with what you had alluded to, Commissioner Hammond, I'm trying to do consistent policies, same approach with the budget, just for the budget. What does it look like for 5%? I'm just giving everybody a heads up. I'm not in favor of merit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm happy to have that discussion.
Okay, great. Is that a second? Then?
Yeah, that'll be a second.
And we have a second. Any public comment on that motion? Come back to the board. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Mann.
with my last vote, I thought I was being consistent with my overall policy. Yeah, because I have often commented at budget hearings that we in fact always end up doing for the Port Authority what we do for the commission. And I hear everybody saying that's what we want to do. So is this going to make me, if I vote no this time, I thought I was going to be consistent with previous votes and policies of the commission to make certain that we're doing the same. Help me.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As I understand your position on the first three motions that were discussed, you supported the immediate increase. You voted against the 5% COLA direction to staff. Therefore, in order to be consistent here, you would vote against this motion as well. And then your position with regard to the Port Authority and the Board of County Commissioners employees would be consistent. You would be voting against the direction to the Executive Director of the Port Authority to include a 5% COLA in his budget preparation for implementation October 1st. So if you vote no now, you're consistent with your previous vote this morning.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what I want to do.
Okay. Then you can vote to support this motion, and the previous motion still passed. So there's no harm, no foul there. So then if you want to support the direction to the executive director to include the 5%,
I want to be
you would support.
consistent with the vote they're about to take.
I'm sorry?
I want to be consistent with the vote they are about to take.
Then vote yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. At this time, any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Mann.
Last week, that we can reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners now.
We are back to the Board of County Commissioners now. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Richard
I
Reyes.
was just going to raise the question, did the Port Authority want to entertain a motion on the merit program to give direction to the executive director to not include that in his budget preparation?
I'll make a motion not to include a merit in his budget preparations.
And I will second that.
Sitting as the Port Authority.
Sorry.
We're reconvening now as the Port Authority.
I make a motion that we do not include a merit.
Thank you.
To be a base rate, be a base COLA.
Correct.
Great. I think I will second that then. Any public comment on that motion regarding the Port Authority merit? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
County Manager, yes.
Commissioners, thank you for just a second. I would really like to thank our Director of Human Resource, Erin Hailstone, and her staff. Well, we look at these spreadsheets, and they appear to be fairly simple in nature. This is an enormously complex issue. There are a lot of moving parts, so I just want to say, thank you very, very much. I mean, they did some great work on in a fairly short period of time, so I just wanted to say a public thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all your staff for working on
And I
that.
appreciate all the work that's done. I know there might be some challenges with some compression. I think it's just assume that we'll obviously deal with that. You'll deal with that as you need to. So compression might be something you'll come across. But thank you. Appreciate it. I just wanted to keep them separate, and I appreciate all the help from Commissioner Hammond keeping me straight and honest.
And we are convening back now as a Board of County Commissioners and going to public hearings now. We have the first public hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. David Halverson, County Attorney's Office. I have your first two public hearings this morning. These items have been duly advertised, and I provided the affidavits of publication to the clerk. Item number 1 is a petition to vacate the public's interest in the unimproved public utility easement centered along the common property lot line between lots 5 and 6 of the platted lots at 1116 Williams Avenue in Lehigh Acres. There were no objections to the requested vacation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Any public comment on public hearing number 1? We'll come back to the board for a motion.
I'll move the item.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Mann. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Thank you. Next case, number 2.
Item 2 is a petition to vacate the public's interest in the unimproved public utility and drainage easement centered along the common property lot line between lots 4 and 5 of the platted lots at 4609 Inez Avenue South in Lehigh Acres. There are no objections to this requested vacation. Staff's available for questions.
Great. Any questions for staff? We'll go to public comment. Any public comment on item number 2, public hearing number 2?
Move it.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Item number 3. Michael, you presenting this case?
Good morning,
Morning.
Commissioners. Michael Jacob, Deputy County Attorney. I have your public hearing number 3. This is the public hearing the first of 2 public hearings for the development agreement with what we call the Kingston project. If you'll bear with me, this is not your typical public hearing during your board meetings. We do have a number of things we need to get on the record and that we provide to you. We have a court reporter here for this proceeding that we will go through a couple steps, just so if you'll bear with us this morning. The first thing I want to put on the record is the affidavit of publication for this hearing. I'll provide that to the clerk. In addition to that, I want to advise the board that first-class mail Notices were mailed out to all residents within 750 feet of the boundaries of the entire project. We have copies of those in the record as well. I would like to provide to the clerk the transcripts for the hearing examiner hearing that preceded this case. In addition to that, we have the hearing examiner's recommendation, exhibits, and the background material that was submitted to the hearing examiner. We're also going to enter that into the record now. For the clerk's purposes, we do have PDFs of all that, so. And for any members of the public who do wish to have any copies of those, we do have PDF versions. Next, after the hearing before the hearing examiner, Camerata Companies held a public information meeting out within the planning community, and we have provided from the representatives correspondence concerning the sort of a summary of the issues and discussions during that meeting, along with the mailing labels for that project where they mailed out notice to the residents of that meeting, and the affidavit of publication for that meeting as well. That's kind of the housekeeping items. With regards to the case, I want to provide an introduction for the members of the public that are here on this case. There has been a number of letters, emails, and correspondence over the last few weeks with regards to this project, the status of the case, and certain opinions as to what it is that this case is or is not. So I want to go through a little brief history and go through exactly where we're at today and why we're here. As many of the board members know, but members of the public may not, on March 30th, 2011, a rezoning application for 4,200 acres was filed by the old Corkscrew Plantation, which is a subsidiary of King Ranch, seeking approval of an industrial plan development based on a court order which required us to analyze the case under 2007 comp plan and zoning regulations. The application for IPD was presented to the board and denied by the Lee County Board on November 6, 2019. Following the denial, Corkscrew Grove Limited Partnership, OCP, presented a Bert Harris claim in the approximate amount of $63 million and ultimately filed a separate declaration action with the circuit court requesting review and challenging the board's denial of its IPD case. Subsequent to that case, the judge ruled in favor of Old Corkscrew Plantation, and I wanted to go through what the court said in its order because I believe a lot of the members of the public who've sent some letters in, although we didn't get a lot, we got a few of them, either are not aware of the status of that case and where we are with that and the import of that case, or they just ignored it. And I don't want anyone else to ignore it. So you'll have to bear with me, court reporter. I'll try to go slow, but I would like to read directly from this so people understand exactly what is facing the board if this approval does not happen.
If it does not happen, correct?
If it does not happen.
Thank you.
Correct. This is from the judge's order. Again, this is part of the record. Anyone can have a copy of this. The 2007 Lee Plan, within its future land use category of density reduction groundwater resource, policy 1.4.5, states unequivocally that natural resource extraction, mining, will be a permitted use at some point or at some time in the planning horizon of the plan. The planning horizon for the 2007 Lee Plan was 2030. The Lee County Board of County Commissioners Resolution Z-18-008 denying plaintiff's application for rezoning did dispositively conclude that a natural resource extraction land use on the site of the subject property will not be permitted due to the board's finding of incompatibility of such a use with nearby current and future land uses. As a result, said resolution is inconsistent with the 2007 Lee Plan, violates the consistency mandate of section 163-3194, subparen 1, subparagraph 1, and is invalid as a matter of law. Corkscrew Grove's application for rezoning is consistent with the 2007 Lee Plan insofar as the application seeks a rezoning for a land use expressly permitted by that comprehensive plan. However, the plaintiff's application for rezoning is inconsistent with the applicable Lee Plan in that the IPD application does not propose conditions the board found to be adequate to protect surrounding land uses. Well, the plaintiff, though is not required by this ruling, may resubmit its current rezoning application to Lee County within a reasonable time without further staff reviews. The county must then provide a timely hearing before a hearing examiner on the sole issue of conditions to be attached to the rezoning approval. Which conditions would adequately protect the surrounding land uses of the subject site. Such conditions must be reasonable and must be consistent as applicable with other similar mining approvals under the 2007 Lee Plan. The Board of County Commissioners, upon receipt of the hearing examiner's recommendation as to the adequate conditions for the proposed mining operations, shall timely proceed to final hearing according to the law. Commissioners and members of the public, if we do not settle this case and we end up in currently we're under appeal, and I will just provide you one more status on that. We have filed an appeal that has been pending before the second DCA. We have requested a 90-day extension. It was granted until April 28th. We requested a second 90-day extension. We have until July 27th to reach a resolution in this matter. If the second DCA does not grant us any more additional time, the matter that I just read, the order that I just read, will be presented to the second DCA and go through the appellate process. If the county loses that case, we will be required to hold a public hearing to determine reasonable conditions under similar mines that were approved prior to the 2007 regulations. We will be required to adopt a resolution finding those conditions approval of a mine on this site. I cannot stress to the members of the public that we are not talking about a blank piece of property with no entitlements. We're not talking about the normal course that we all understood land use law to be. We are referring to an order from a court that has put us in this position. We cannot ignore it. We cannot rely upon members of the public who don't live in Lee County or aren't residents next door to this proposed mine. We cannot look beyond that. We have to look at what we're presented today. We cannot stick our head in the sand and presume that this case is just going to go away. Because a denial by the second DCA to our appeal will put us directly in a position that neither this board or the residents of Lee County wish to be in. The settlement agreement that the board entered into provides for a process. We are in the second public hearing of that process. The first one was before the Lee County hearing examiner to address the issue of which regulations the proposed project is not consistent with. It is a bit different than our normal procedure, but what that hearing does, it sets out, and it intends to set out what Lee County regulations are we not consistent with, and then to address the public interest that those regulations are designed to protect. For a lack of better words, it takes a 40,000-foot level and say, what are their interests? What are the public harm? What are we trying to address with those regulations? And can we provide conditions of approval or conditions or limitations of the development to address those public interests? I will tell you, going through this exercise in the previous FFD case and in this case, it is an enlightening process to look at our regulations and determine what is the public interest in some of these regulations. What are we exactly trying to do? When you open up that dialogue, you begin to see what it is that these projects can do for the county. You will hear the rest of the day some more dialogue as to the project, and I won't go into the specifics of those. But I will provide to you the process that the settlement agreement follows is provided for under Chapter 70 of the Florida statute. That process involves a Burt Harris claim, which we do have in this case. That Burt Harris claim, the base claim, is $63 million. There's attorney's fees and costs and interest that go on top of that could push this close to $100 million. The Lee County residents would be required to pay that to the developer and will receive no conservation lands, they will receive no interest in the lands, and then ultimately the county will be left with this project that we talked about earlier. In light of that, we have proposed for you a development agreement that follows the authority allowed under 7001 and for settlement agreements. And I will go through the list of items that the settlement agreement process can provide. And excuse me again for having to read this, but it's necessary based on some of the comments that y'all have received and put in the record. The types of settlement options that may be provided include an adjustment of land development or permit standards or other provisions controlling the development of use of land, increases or modification in the density, intensity, or use of areas of development, the transfer of development rights, land swaps or exchanges, mitigation including payments in lieu of on-site mitigation, location on the least sensitive portion of the property, conditioning the amount of development or use permitted, a requirement that issues be addressed on a more comprehensive basis than a single proposed use or development. And I think that's key to some of the most recent correspondence that you've received, is we're taking, and the applicant's representatives and the property owner's representatives will tell you, we're taking an approach that isn't typically done in developments. And we're taking an approach that looks at the land owned by King Ranch and ultimately the lands out there by the county, and taking a holistic approach on how to develop this property in a reasonable manner that protects the public interest. Further, issuance of development order, a variance, special exception, or other extraordinary relief. Purchase of the real property or an interest therein by an appropriate governmental entity or payment of compensation. Upon acceptance of the settlement agreement, the county is authorized to implement the settlement offer by appropriate development agreement. That is the process we're in today. By issuing a variance, special exception, or other extraordinary relief, or by other appropriate method. I will note that after this hearing, we will request that you, at the conclusion of this hearing, we request that you to have a motion to direct this to the second public hearing on June 22nd at 9:30. I will remind you that is a county zoning day, so members of the public, if you want to show up for that, please understand the items that are on the agenda for the day will not be part, so be here on time. In addition to that, again, I will beg the Commission's indulgence. We have a lengthy presentation that has to be put on the record to address the issues that are required for the state statute. Following these two public hearings, we'll be filing a petition with the court under the 7001 process for a court review and approval. If the court approves that settlement, then this case will be over the county and all of its damages, claims against it for the $63 million, and ultimately the mine will go away. I will tell you that part of this project, and just to highlight a few elements that will be discussed, the county will be acquiring the mining rights for the entire 6,600 acres, I may have those acreage wrong, in exchange for approximately $2.4 million in prop share credits. What that will do for the county is there will never be an opportunity for another person to mine that case or mine that property in that portion of Lee County. I cannot stress upon the members of the public the importance of this case and reaching a settlement. I cannot stress upon the residents that are near this proposed project the importance of reaching the settlement. And I will turn this over to, I believe, Dan DeLisi or Ray Blacksmith to go through the presentation if there are no questions for me.
Is there any questions for our county staff at this time? Michael, thank you for the presentation. I look forward to hear the presentation. So basically, I'll look at facts. So basically, we have two choices: either accept the agreement, or we didn't accept it within 90 days, would have the mining and be on the hook for a lot of money, correct?
That is correct.
So the people we heard that poses, I've talked to some, I think they pose the amount of density that was approved in this settlement agreement, but I think that's also, it's unfortunate we hear from the lobbyists from Naples and people on the outside area and stuff, but do they understand? I mean, I just don't understand why would they want mining if it's for environmental reasons over housing? I just don't understand that. Why would they accept mine over that? Because that's a choice. We have no other choice. I think there's also some concern about they want to have less density, but that's already been agreed upon in this settlement agreement, correct?
That's correct. And typically, I don't go off script and tell you my own personal opinion, but I will in this case because it is important.
Well, you've sat in the hearings, you've heard the comments, that's why I'm asking.
Correct.
You've
Well,
heard the comments,
no, I have no problem giving an opinion on that. I don't think they have any skin in the game, so they have nothing to lose.
They do it based upon their paid membership, ask them to do this. Because
They show up in these meetings. They don't even show up to the meetings. They just complain in letters and then send nobody to add anything to the meetings.
But they're actually advocating for mining in an area that's.
I don't think they realize just the gravity of the situation because they're not participating. They're just in the wings going off scripts that they don't really understand that the members of the public that are sitting behind us right now are going to suffer.
Thank you. Dan?
Okay, for the record, Dan DeLisi. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the settlement agreement, and as Michael talked about, specifically the policies in the Lee plan that are being contravened by the settlement agreement, and how the public interest is being protected through the conditions of development in the settlement agreement. In consideration of time, I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly, but if you have questions, there's a whole team of people behind me. There has been a lot of data and analysis done to demonstrate the environmental benefits of what's being proposed and to structure a development agreement that is consistent with what the county has been looking for in the past with restoration of the southeast Lee County community in the density reduction groundwater resource area. Just to give you a sense of context, the subject property that we're talking about, approximately 6,700 acres, is outlined in yellow. There's a small hatched area just on the north side of Corkscrew Road that's a swap property that's part of the settlement agreement. And that would be swapped with a property at the northwest side of this site. But the property extends all the way from nearly the Collier County line, just on the north side of Crew, all the way past Corkscrew Road up to State Road 82. This is a huge property, so it's contiguous with Crew on the south. The Imperial Marsh Preserve is the Lee County 2020 property on the west. Lehigh Acres is on the north, and we're just about 2 miles east of Verdana Village, which was approved as an environmental enhancement and preservation overlay community. As was on the slide that Michael just showed you, this is the summary of the proposed agreement. 10,000 dwelling units, 700,000 square feet of commercial. Key here is 3,287 acres of restoration and conservation area on the property in key areas. 61% overall open space, and a phased restoration of those wetland and flowway areas, as well as a proportionate share payment for traffic for roadway improvements. So overall, the development agreement is structured just like a plan development, any plan development that you all would review and approved, and it has been modeled after the environmental enhancement and preservation overlay communities farther west along Corkscrew Road that have been approved. The settlement agreement contains a master concept plan, which is essentially what you're seeing on the screen now. It contains a schedule of uses, property development regulations, deviations, and most importantly, the development conditions, which I'll talk about in a second. But as you could see on the screen, what we have is a development and restoration plan, which has a spine road connecting State Road 82 all the way to Corkscrew Road. The areas in tan are development parcels. The area in green are the conservation and restoration areas. I will note that there's additional open space within the areas, the tan areas. So that's not all development. That includes green space and open space. The green areas are just the conservation and restoration areas. In the development conditions, as I mentioned before, these outline how the development and restoration will occur over time. Condition 1C ties any development activity to a proportionate amount of restoration activity. So you can only do development if the restoration activity goes along with that development. And you can't get ahead, you can't do a lot of development up front and just a little restoration and have that at the back end. It has to be proportionate and sequential throughout the life of the project. There are a number of other conditions through the settlement agreement, through the development agreement, that are almost all identical to conditions in the environmental enhancement and preservation overlay communities. Condition 4 requires a human-wildlife coexistence plan. 5, open space requirements. 7, restoration and conservation area, how those are provided. Condition 10 requires native vegetation for required plantings in common areas, which obviously is a water supply benefit. Condition 12 is the proportionate share. 14 requires water quality monitoring and an enhanced lake management plan. 15 and 16, central irrigation systems and the elimination of well and septics, or the prohibition against septics on site and wells for potable water. Condition 18 requires utilization of an integrated surface and groundwater model to do a hydrologic restoration plan. Condition 25 is unique to this project. That requires that through the development and restoration process that the developer put in infrastructure that'll help alleviate flooding that occurs today in the Wildcat Farms neighborhood. So we identified existing conditions that this can improve. As noted in the joint memorandum to the hearing examiner, with the development conditions provided, this settlement agreement is consistent with a number of policies in the comprehensive plan, including the density reduction groundwater resource policy. But most importantly, it meets nearly every criteria of the environmental enhancement and preservation overlay. So with that, I'm going to talk about the policies that are contravened in this settlement agreement and how the public interest is still being protected. So policy 33.2.4.1 requires designation of a community to be to be part of the environmental enhancement and preservation overlay. You need to be designated on map D, and you need to be within a certain area, essentially west of the Imperial Marsh Preserve. Obviously, this property is east of the Imperial Marsh Preserve, and we haven't gone through a comprehensive plan amendment to designate the property on map 2D. But the public interest is being protected by allowing this to occur, by allowing more development to be, or more property to be designed consistent with the intent of the overlay. And I just want to note what the hearing examiner concluded in the hearing examiner's report. I think she summed it up quite well. The property possesses the characteristics and potential to provide significant regional hydrological and wildlife connections. These connections would improve, preserve, and restore regional surface and groundwater resources and indigenous wildlife habitats. So that is how the public interest is being protected despite contravening that policy. Policy 33.2.4.2 requires approval as a plan development. This is obviously not going through the plan development process. However, as I've mentioned before, the end product is the same thing that you would get in a plan development, namely conditions of development, you're getting through this process. Moreover, the public engagement is consistent with what you'd be getting in a plan development project, if not more extensive. So there are 2 hearings before the Board of County Commissioners. There's the hearing examiner hearing, and as Michael mentioned before, Camerata held a neighborhood information meeting on May 30th that also took public input. Policy 33.2.4.2E requires the recording of a conservation easement for 55% of the property. This settlement agreement provides for 50% of the private development area, which equates to 3,287 acres to be preserved or restored on site. And let me again just quote the hearing examiner's report, because I think she did a really great job with this. The public interest is being protected by, quote, the property size affords the opportunities to create contiguous restoration areas far exceeding those created by other projects in the overlay. Currently, this acreage has little ecological benefit due to hydrological alterations. Much of the site is cleared and traversed by irrigation ditches necessary to support ongoing agricultural endeavors. Berms have disrupted historical sheet flow. Remaining indigenous vegetation is limited to isolated wetland areas. Acreage slated for restoration will require backfilling, regrading, removal of exotic vegetation, and the planting of indigenous materials. A required maintenance entity ensures long-term management of natural areas at no cost to the county. So understanding that what's there now is not natural land. It's heavily developed and utilized agricultural property. There's a lot of on-site activity that's going to need to occur to be able to make this very large property a restored property. Policy 33.2.4.2I requires the elimination of agriculture at the time of the first development order. Again, this is an issue of scale. There's a big scale difference here when you're talking about 6,700 acres versus a smaller property. And there is a potential for unintended consequences if you remove all of that agriculture at the time of first development order. But more importantly, I think from the county's interest, you get a significant benefit with each increment of development and restoration. So you see a big lift in water supply and the groundwater resources, and you see a big lift in the reduction of nutrient loading. There has been a lot of analysis to look at this. I'm not going to go through the benefits you see in every phase from the water supply standpoint, but I just will note overall, there's a 77% reduction in water withdrawal from the aquifer system. And that equates to around 9.9 million gallons a day. That's the reduction that you're getting from what's there now to this proposed settlement. Similarly, there are very large water quality benefits that you see, and you see these again with every increment of development. And again, I won't go through every phase, but in total, we're seeing a projected 80% reduction in total phosphorus and a 49% reduction in total nitrogen. So policy 33.2.4.3C limits density based on tier priority acquisition. And the tier priority acquisition map is a map you have in the Lee plan. The settlement allows for density of 1.5 units an acre. And let me just note that the tiered priority acquisition map came from a study that was done as part of the Dover Coal study, which looked at this property and noted that this property and the areas that are being restored were priority 1 restoration areas. So the restoration you're achieving on this property is similar in significance to tier 1 lands in the environmental enhancement and preservation overlay. But when you look back at the staff report that adopted policy 33.2.4.3C, what's important to note is the density that was allocated based on tier was done in order to phase development consistent with infrastructure coming online. And through this settlement agreement, we are dealing with all of the infrastructure so that we're not going to be, so that we are meeting the intent of this policy. Policy 33.2.4.4D and 33.2.5 limits commercial development in the Southeast Lee community to, would you like me to?
Dan, I was going to ask if we could take a 10-minute recess. Yes. If I wasn't sure about some of your presentation, you had a breaking point there. If we could take a 10-minute recess.
If there's something you want to.
Great, thank you. We're going to take a recess and we'll reconvene at 11:10. We will reconvene now, the Board of County Commissioners meeting, and thank you for your patience. Dan, would you like to continue with your presentation, please? Thank you.
Okay. Dan DeLisi for the record again. So I was talking about the policies that are being contravened. Policies 33.2.4.4D and 33.2.5 limit commercial to 300,000 square feet in the southeast Lee County planning community. So the 300,000 square feet, if you recall, that was adopted fairly recently, a few years ago, in the Lee Plan, and that was based on the amount of residential projected for the communities along East Corkscrew Road. Of course, when you add 10,000 new units, that creates more of a demand for additional commercial. But I think importantly, if you remember that regional aerial that I showed you before, the property extends all the way up to State Road 82. And most of the commercial that's being proposed is along State Road 82, where we have Lehigh Acres. And for decades, as long as I've been involved in planning in Lee County, we've talked about the commercial deficit in Lehigh Acres. And so it's not just about the additional 10,000 units, it's about what's going on in Lehigh Acres and providing as many trips as possible to stay locally in that part of the county rather than driving farther west in Lee County. Policy 33.2.4E limits commercial to neighborhood levels. And of course, and as I mentioned before, the settlement allows for 700,000 square feet. The neighborhood, limiting to neighborhood levels of commercial was partly based on locations in proximity to water supply wells. This property is a pretty far distance from any public water supply wells. And again, most of the commercial is going to be located up towards Lehigh Acres, where you're surrounded by the urban community future land use category, which does not have those same limitations. So, the public interest is being met in that way. As Michael mentioned before, we did have a hearing examiner's hearing, and let me just start to wrap up based on what came out of that hearing. Her conclusion is pretty clear that the settlement agreement serves the public interest based on the development conditions. And so I'll start with that. But I did want to read just a couple quotes from some of the remarks that the hearing examiner had. She said, quote, "The agreement ensures restoration of historical flow patterns to an extent far exceeding what the county could achieve alone. The sheer size of the project offers a unique opportunity to restore wetland systems over a 10 square mile area." And again, it's just the sheer size of this property and the location of the historic flowways and the on-site areas that provides this unique opportunity. And then she goes on to say that CGLP, Corkscrew Grove Limited Partnership, will assume the cost of acquisition, clearing crops, backfilling ditches, flattening dikes and berms, removing agricultural structures, capping 67 irrigation wells serving agriculture, removing exotic vegetation, grading to restore historic flow patterns, planting native vegetation, restored areas, and perpetually maintain the restored areas free of exotics. So I just want to note for a second, this is not just about buying land. When we talk about the 3,287 acres of restoration, if the public were to do this, not only would you have to buy the land, but the cost of doing the restoration activities, which the hearing examiner is talking about, is enormous. I mean, there's a lot of earthwork that needs to be done, and you all know this. You all have been involved in restoration activities in the past. The cost of buying the land is one thing, but it's the restoration costs that this settlement agreement is providing, and the perpetual maintenance that also comes at a cost to the private developer, which is key to this whole settlement agreement. So just in summary and to conclude, the settlement is structured to similar to existing environmental enhancement and preservation overlay communities. We're required to do the same analysis prior to development, same design criteria in recognition of the property's unique location. This eliminates future lime rock mining, existing wells on site, and future septic tanks. The county gains 3,287 acres of restored land, and the result is 77% reduction in annual water use, 9.9 million gallons a day. It's a very, very large number. 49% reduction in total nitrogen, 80% reduction in total phosphorus. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Dan's presentation? And thank you, Dan, for bringing up the wells, because I know a lot of people don't think about it. It's unfortunate some of the groups doesn't understand that 67 wells are being used in 6,000 acres. They were mapped, basically it's agriculture, so it's not permitted. We only have 130 wells for the whole county. 130 wells for the whole county for water. They use 67 in the DRGR just for agriculture reasons. So thank you for pointing that out, though. Any other questions for staff? Anybody else in your presentation, or are we back to Michael?
Looks like Ray's gone.
Not done quite yet. How do you put this, Dan? How do you get this to one screen? That was the limit of my knowledge.
Just the clicker.
Yeah. For the record, Ray Blacksmith, president of Camerata Companies. My presentation, which again, I'll try to keep it short, is to give you some detail about the project itself, which if you were to approve the settlement agreement, the project would be called Kingston. Just to give you an idea of what's occurred along the Corkscrew Road corridor, everything in green is the existing conservation lands prior to our doing the developments that you're aware of along Corkscrew Road, such as the preserve at Corkscrew, Corkscrew Shores, the Place, and Verdana Village. So this is, again, the conservation lands prior to our developments, and this is what we've been able to achieve. It shows that we've added thousands of acres of restoration land, conservation lands, connected wildlife corridors, and flowways. Some of the development visions and the regional benefits serving the public interest. We're eliminating a lime rock mine. We're phasing the termination of agricultural activities. We're eliminating the potential for septic tanks and potable wells. The project accommodates the reconnection and restoration of historic flowways, and will provide an off-site drainage connection to the Lamstead Canal that's in the northeast corner of this property. Taking some of the water that's in severe rain events, floods portions of Wildcat Farms community, will take down the berms and try to accept that water into the Kingston project, filter it before it gets discharged onto the Audubon property to the south. Again, we'll provide an off-site drainage connection along the easterly property line and reduce flooding to the Wildcat Farms community. The plan of hydrologic flowway restoration provides beneficial community to further improve and restore hydro periods within the area. The project's surface water storage design will promote groundwater recharge, which benefits the water supply needs, and the project supports the intention and efforts of the current Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership South Lee County Watershed Initiative, and the study to restore more natural water flows and improve water quality. The project will control and monitor all ground and surface water discharge onto abutting Audubon and Crew lands, which is currently under the ag use, not monitored. We'll construct a major spine road that, once completed, will be dedicated over to Lee County, and that'll connect Corkscrew Road to State Route 82, offering another north-south roadway for the communities. And again, that road will be designed as a collector road following county standards and requirements, and then be dedicated to the county at no cost. And the project will include commercial tracks to service the requirements of the project. And it's stated that we're doing 700,000 square feet of commercial. The stipulation settlement requires no more than 150,000 square feet would be constructed along Corkscrew Road. A maximum of 50,000 square feet would be built along the Spine Road, which we'll call Kingston Parkway. And about 500,000 square feet is being allocated for the intersection of the Spine Road and State Route 82. The property currently has about 1,192 acres of wetlands and other surface water. Once developed, out of the 1,192 acres of existing wetlands, we'd be impacting less than 11.5 acres, and that the impacts will be taken care of within the Kingston project itself. This map shows the number of existing wells, irrigation wells for the agricultural use on the property, and there's 67 wells that are permitted. But we found in the other projects we've done along the Corkscrew Road corridor, like the Preserve, Corkscrew Shores, the Place, and Verdana Village, there's a significant number of existing agricultural wells that are unpermitted. All the wells on the property will be terminated and capped, other than those that are needed to provide the irrigation needs for the community. This is within the settlement agreement, the Hydrologic Restoration Map. And if you follow the pointer, in the northwest corner, this is Route 82, and down here is Corkscrew Road. This is the Lamstead Canal, and Wildcat Farms Road runs along the property line. And currently in severe storm events, Wildcat Farms Road floods. A lot of that water backs up here into this community. We're looking to breach the berms that are on that side of the community to be able to take the water into the Kingston project. There's also a large berm that goes along the eastern property line of the Kingston project. Our engineers will study that berm and find locations where we could cut openings into the berm, because Wildcat Farms, which is to the east of the project, has been getting flooding historically. And they've reached out to the Water Management District and the county looking for assistance, and it's been difficult to find assistance without a major construction project, which we would do. As an example of nutrient reduction, we took our project called The Place at Corkscrew, whereas in November of 2016, you had nitrogen and chlorophyll levels exceeding almost 2.5 milligrams per liter. And now in November of 22, there's a significant reduction. It's gone for nitrogen, 2.46 milligrams per liter to 0.93, and chlorophyll from 78.6 to 6.02. And that's a result of eliminating the agricultural use and making a residential development. Once we started due diligence on the site, we've done over 53 soil borings, because it was our understanding that the project was presented as an aggregate mine. The applicant, Corkscrew Grove Limited Partnership, said that it was FDOT approved rock, and we've confirmed with the 53 borings, it is rock, it is hard, and it is shallow. It is a viable mine, which will be terminated with the approval of the settlement agreement. To be able to construct the project, this shows our off-site potable water that we'll be performing. We'll start at the Kingston project, run a water main down Corkscrew Road and tie it into Alico Road. This is the off-site sewer proposal, again, starting at Kingston and running it down Corkscrew Road and tying into the existing facilities, either tying into it or enlarging the existing facilities. This is the FFD project, which has already obtained approvals for residential development. They're going through their DO plans now. They've sized their infrastructure for sewer and water to accommodate the FFD project. If Kingston is approved, some of those facilities would have to be enlarged to accept the Kingston project. Any enlargement of those facilities required for FFD would be funded by the Kingston project. If the Kingston project were to go through completion, the county would expect to receive about $202 million in fees, and real estate taxes would run about $80 million just for the Kingston project. I'm just going to flip through. When we get involved in a project, as you're aware, we've talked about it on all the projects that we've brought before you. We do an outreach to all the agencies to see the viability of the project that we're presenting, to listen to any concerns that the agencies would have and how we could solve that to go forward. So for Kingston, we've personally met with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the South Florida Water Management District, the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, the National Audubon Society, the Florida Wildlife Federation. We've also had a neighborhood meeting on May 30th to make a presentation and discuss the project and try to alleviate agency concerns on what we're proposing. Through the due diligence, this map shows on the left, every dot is a recorded panther. However, when you look at the map on the left, it looks like there's hundreds of panthers on the site. In reality, all those dots represent only 16 panthers. And of the 16, 14 have died. And of the 14, only 2 were by vehicle. The rest were by interspecies mortality. When you remove from the map all the panthers that are no longer, that haven't survived, on the right shows the property as it exists today. And all the surviving panthers you see are all along in here, as it showed on this map here. The Conservancy of Southwest Florida had sent a letter to the commissioners of concerns. In the letter, it said that adding the southerly 2,474 acres to the settlement agreement, they had a concern of us doing that, but in honesty, adding that land provides public interest by eliminating all the mining rights. Right now, the mining lawsuit is on 4,200 acres on the northerly side of the property. Corkscrew Grove Limited Partnership owns all 6,600 acres, and with the approval of this project, they'd give up the mining rights on the entire property that they own, not just the mining lawsuit, but on the southerly portion also. It allows for contiguous flowways. The construction of the Kingston project, we would reconstruct historic flowways, put in the culverts underneath Corkscrew Road, treat the water prior to it discharging onto the Audubon property to the south. We'll eliminate all the oil, gas, and mineral access rights on all of the land. We'll eliminate the agricultural use. We'll phase that elimination, which reduces the nutrient loadings. And at the discharge point on the project, going onto the Audubon property, there's an existing approximate 25-foot wide outfall structure, concrete weir, that's in poor shape. We'll reconstruct that. One of the issues that the Conservancy had also was they stated that in our presentation in front of the HECS, it was alluded that the Kingston project was the same as an EPCO project. And this slide comes right from the HECS presentation where it was disclosed that the Kingston project is not within the current EPCO area. What we're looking to get approved, the conditions for approval on the Kingston project are very similar, though, to an EPCO project. The Conservancy stated that, again, that it was alluded that the project was an EPCO in the overlay. We do serve the public interest because it provides a minimum of 4,200 acres of open space, and that is a minimum. In all of our other projects, we've exceeded minimums. We provide a minimum of 3,287 acres of conservation land. Again, that would be the minimum. We'd be looking to exceed that. We're reconstructing historic flowways, creating primary panther habitat from agricultural lands, reducing nutrient loadings. We're doing surface and groundwater monitoring and attenuation, and 9.9 million gallons per day in groundwater withdrawal reduction. These are pictures taken just last week of what's occurring on the Kingston property today as an agricultural use. This is the farming that's going on. And as a comparison, this is the restoration work that we've done at the Place development. Every blade of grass on here has been hand planted. This used to be a farm field also. And this is after 2.5 years of installation. Again, at the Place development, this is a restoration flowway corridor. This is what we'll duplicate at the Kingston project. Again, taken at the Place. And available for questions.
This time? Okay, great. Thank you. You know, there's been questions about the density of the 1.5 units per acre, and that's a maximum number of units per acre. Again, if you follow our projects on Corkscrew Road, we've been allowed a maximum density on each of the projects, and traditionally or historically, we've created an end result of less than what the maximum was, what we're allowed to do. One of the things we looked at the Kingston project of the 1.5 units per acre, 10,000 units, and again, it's a minimum, or it's a maximum number of 10,000 units we would do. How do you come up with that number of units? All right, so again, Kingston is 6,600 acres. If you look at the Kingston project, if you averaged 1 unit per acre on the southerly portion of the property, you'd end up with about 2,400 units. And if you used a 6 unit per acre on the northerly portion of the property, which is currently allowed in urban development, you'd end off the 82 side?
Off of 82, correct. You'd end up with about 2,000 units. And then if you used 1.5 units per acre for the actual mine application, you'd have 5,700 acres. And the 1.5 units per acre on that land is justified because that's where a majority of the wetlands are, the majority of the restoration work has to occur. And you need to create the density to be able to pay for not only the acquisition of land, but to perform the restoration work that's expected to try to conform with the EPCO overlays. And I am available for questions.
Any other questions for staff at this time, or for Ray? Great, thank you. We back to Michael now, or are we? Okay. You said public comment, Michael? You're done? Okay, great. Okay, this time we'll pay public comment on this public hearing number 3. First speaker is Jim Brown. After Jim Brown, I have Patty Whitehead. Morning.
Yes, my wife and I live right next to this property. We live on Genoa Avenue, which is actually right next to Wildcat Road, in the corner, right where Route 82 and Wildcat Road meet. We can literally see portions of it from our back porch, and we do not want to see a mine there, of course. And we've had occasion to visit the place at Corkscrew and saw the work that these developers have done, and it's amazing. We're really impressed. So speaking for both of us, I'd like to say that we're in favor of this going through.
Great, thank you.
I could see a lot of benefits economically to the area, even with the commercial properties that's going to be allowed along Route 82. That is really needed in that area. As it is, we got to go 10 miles to the grocery store, so.
Okay. I understand, and the flood has been an issue. Thank you, sir, for coming down. Patty Whitehead?
Good morning, Commissioners. There's many things that are wrong with this project. I understand their argument about the increased density, but you know what? You just had a whole presentation before about the lack of affordable housing, incomes not meeting the needs of the residents and even your own county employees. maybe, you know, the goal should be to concentrate that housing and that density closer to State Road 82, which is already highly developed, sort of industrialized with the type of uses that are going on there. I have a statement here from one of our board members at the Responsible Growth Management Coalition regarding the hearing examiner's findings. He writes, the hearing officer has taken it upon herself to act as the policy board. Her conclusion correctly states that the proposal violates the plan, the written word. The written word, on the other hand, she feels can be tossed by the intent. That is outside her technical competence, which is to evaluate based upon information and testimony as to whether the law is being followed. What she's approving is contractual comprehensive plan amendment, which I'm pretty sure is contrary to the comprehensive planning law. Sure. Which is contrary to the comprehensive planning law. The problem here is, you know, the impacts that it'll create not only to wildlife. The southern portion was never included in the zoning application, that nearly 2,500 acres. That's just a plain old giveaway to this developer. That's what it is. Plain and simple. I don't see it any other way. Nobody rationally can see it any other way. I understand this argument also about extinguishing mining rights and giving the developer $2.4 million prop share credits. Well, who can mine when the land is covered by fee simple single-family homes? So that's just a pure giveaway that's not even necessary. I mean, there would be no contest there on that issue. The nitrogen reduction, what the developer didn't factor in is, you know, you have over 10,000 toilets flushing now. All that effluent, all that poop is hitting the Three Oaks sewage treatment plant, which is already an aging, nearly functionally obsolete plant, all right? You have folks in Lee County that don't have access to that plant to be able, they're all surviving on septic, on quarter and third acre lots in San Carlos, even myself in Estero, all right? You're connecting this developer and just blowing past us? That's not in the public interest. The public interest is connecting people to sewer that absolutely need sewer today, yesterday, and needed it 10, 20 years ago, because the water quality in the estuaries play out that fact.
Thank you, Patty. Next speaker is Richard Dean. Is it Richard Dean?
Jeez.
Morning.
Good morning. I am a landowner at 18810 Misty Morning Lane in Wildcat Farms. Our property backs up to the Kingston project, and I'm here today to support the Kingston project. Thank you.
Great. So you're a neighbor. Thank you for coming down. Scott Rush.
Good morning, and thank you for the time. So I'm here to speak about facts. I'm a Lee County resident, live in Estero, born and raised here, and I've seen the growth that's happened in this area. It's a good and a bad thing. I do not want another rock mine in Lee County. Absolutely, totally against it. So the facts are, we're either going to have controlled, good development, or we're going to have a rock mine on this property. I do not want that. So I'm here in full support of the Kingston project.
Great. Thank you. Next speaker is Stephen Brocken.
Hello, my name is Stephen Brodkin. I'm here representing the concerned citizens of Bayshore community and also Women for a Better Lee. We believe that the settlement agreement is not in the public interest. The settlement agreement adds 2,474 acres to the original 4,202 acre site for development, which is nearly a 60% increase in size to the original site that was under dispute. So looking at it another way, this is property is over 10 square miles. So that means that over 5 square miles will become dense housing and commercial activity. And this is all within the DRGR part of Lee County. The the settlement would allow 1.5 dwelling units per acre, which is an increase of 15 times their currently allowed density. for that area. We feel it's just a very poorly negotiated settlement agreement. Way too much has been given away. It's so frustrating that every time there's a large development in the county commission gives so much away. Changes are made to the lead plan or agreements are made like this one, whether it's Babcock or River Hall or some other developments in the southeast DRGR, so much is given away at the expense of the people, the environment, and the wildlife. We feel that developers are getting way more compensation than they should. So the property owner was denied a mine, and now they get tremendously more development rights, completely inconsistent with the DRGR. We don't understand how, if the current landowner purchased the land in 2016, how is it that they experienced the loss? It seems like the process and the agreement give the impression that the developer is in charge and the appearance of impropriety. So frankly, it just smells like the whole thing is a setup. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Henderson, is that for this item? I just got a card from Mark Henderson.
Hello, my name is Mark Henderson, and I live on Silver Panther. And my property, and I have a home and property that parallel, are right next to the Grove. And with the issues of the berms, I'm excited about the development coming in, because I get a lot of flooding. And it's all because of the berm and all the sheet flow. And therefore, when they start their development, and once it starts going, it's going to be fantastic. So I just hope you guys vote in favor of the development and the road. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? I have a couple cards that had no names. Norm Cannon? Okay, please come forward. You didn't specify which number, so I've been calling you. I wasn't sure which one you were speaking on. Norm Cannon of Fort Myers, Jamaica Bay, right? Yep.
Yes, good morning. Two things. I have a letter from an attorney that was sent to all of the commissioners, which they obviously received because a response was received at 12:01 this morning from the developer who was not on the mailing list. And I would like this in the record, and I would also like my statements in the record.
Sure. Give it to the clerk.
The hearing examiner's approval of the CGLP settlement seems to be based on the words "in the interest of the people" as opposed to facts. She says that it is all right to contravene legislated standards and approved rules and regulations in order to make this approval acceptable. How can it possibly be in the interest of the people to go forward in this manner? How can it be in the interest of the people to approve this settlement when the hearing examiner's meeting was not posted on their website? How can it be in the interest of the people when public notice was posted only 10 calendar days before the meeting? How can it be in the interest of the people when the settlement agreement was not available to the public until days after the hearing? How can it be in the interest of the people to acquiesce to the threat of the Burt Harris Act when this property was known to have been denied a mining permit prior to their purchase? How can it be in the interest of the people to increase the density 15 times of the zoning requirements? How can it be in the interest of the people to call for 50% to be protected when other properties on the same street are required to protect 55% of the land? How can it be in the interest of people to summarily add 2,474 acres to the development without prerequisite hearings and approval? How can it be in the interest of the people when the word perpetuity, which is used in the settlement, is described by a county attorney at the examiner hearing as meaning for life, yet says in a subsequent communication that the agreement may be amended in the future? How can it be in the interest of the people when the county swaps valuable road frontage acreage for an equivalent amount of interior landlocked acreage? And one last thing, how can it be in the interest of the people to try to set precedents that will result in the ultimate urbanization of the remaining DRGR with resulting congestion, habitat loss, and environmental degradation? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time on this item? Please come forward. Did you provide a card? If you didn't, just state your name for the record.
Hi, Linda Nelson, and I live on Wildcat Drive. We had talked extensively at the meeting that we had on the 30th at the place with the developers and so forth, and they went through all the flowways and everything, because they know that we have a problem with flooding because of the berms on Wildcat Drive, and it goes all the way down. And I just wanted to come up and just put it on record, because they've been very good about it, saying that they were going to help us out, you know, with the flooding, to take berms down and, you know, redo them and get the drainage flowing away from us. But also, the fact is that if this, the two evils, I'd rather have this. To me, this is great. I do not want a mine across the street from me. Plus, if they don't put this through, us taxpayers are going to pay $63 million, which is crazy. So I fully support this whole development going through. I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comment on the first public hearing? We'll come back to the board for any discussions or a motion for move forward to the second public hearing. Joe, do you want to address it?
So if I can.
Yeah.
First, I want to thank everybody at the staff level and county attorney's office and all the consultants involved. We've put a tremendous amount of time into this. This wasn't just thrown up on a screen and here we are. And the staff worked very, very hard, and the legal department worked very, very hard to ensure that the county was fully protected and got everything they possibly could get to protect the environment here. What I call anti-development groups seem to show up at these meetings and have an opinion about every project that goes in and how it's going to affect the environment. I've yet to see any of them come out to the project and even do a tour to see what we've done there. Some of the folks that have in the different agencies have been very impressed and like very much what we do. And ultimately, those people that complain the loudest don't live in the area. They go home, if the mine shows up there, well, the people that live in the area have to deal with that mine, not the people that live in Bay Shore or somewhere else. And quite frankly, it's fine for everybody to present their opinion, and certainly we have plenty. And I won't go as far as to say this project is perfect. But if you take 100 acres at 55% or you take 6,600 acres at 55%, it's a whole different ballgame. And in this particular project, the 3,274 acres that is being a part of this project is north of $100 million. And if you take the restoration plans that have to go into this, it's north of $25 million. And if you take the DEP permit for the mine, it was destroying 150 acres of wetlands. We're destroying 12. So when I look at the project as a whole, and I look at how we calculated density and so on, and the fact that affordable housing is very critical, you need numbers. To be able to get lower prices, you need numbers. There's a fee that goes into all this stuff, whether it be the fire, whether it be the police, whether it be the schools, whether it be the environmental panther mitigation, which is in the millions, whether it be restoration, all that goes into the price of these homes, impact fees, et cetera. We think we've done a pretty good job with this. Might not be perfect, but it's a 15-year project. It's going to take a long time before it gets built out. There are going to be a lot of things that potentially will be good as it continues to progress. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware that our company takes a lot of pride in what we do, and we consider ourselves environmental people as well as developers. We don't just go in there and build as many as we can build. This is a cap. The Shores was 800. It ended up with 680. The Preserve was 775. It ended up with 441. So it's a cap, and it allows over 15 years to have flexibility in the market. Sometimes you have bigger lots with the pandemic. Sometimes you have smaller lots if you want affordability. So I just wanted to be clear that we are going to do the best we can for Lee County to build a terrific project and to eliminate another rock mine, which we are not in favor of at all, as we have multiple projects on that corridor and multiple residents that have come to us and say, join our group to fight the mine. And I said, the only way I can join your group to fight the mine is to buy the property that's going to be the mine. So that's what I did. And hopefully we could pull this together and get this approved. Thank you for your time.
We'll come back to the board now for a motion to.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to continue to the second public hearing. Commissioner Wayne?
I will second it. And Michael, could you come up to the mic? Just for clarity. So we're here to convene the stipulation of settlement, correct?
Correct.
Correct. And our choices are to ignore all the legal things that have been put before us, to pay $63 million, to pay interest and cost, to potentially develop this land even greater, or at least give them the tools necessary to do this.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Dan, could you come up for a second? Would you go through a couple of your highlights in your presentation about the water savings?
Yeah, 9.9 million gallons a day.
Okay. So, in summary, we're settling an obligation. We're restoring 3,274. We're having maintenance done perpetually and for perpetuity. We're benefiting the environment. We're saving 9.9 million gallons a day. Those are the facts. As someone that has advocated for the environment, I get emotion. But this board is doing something to prevent utilizing or paying $100 million of your money. That's what's at fact. It's not my emotion. It's not what I want to do. I have to make factual decisions. And quite frankly, thank you very much for all you're doing to do everything we can. People may not necessarily like the decision, but I heard from 4 people that live near the property, you're doing the best to mitigate the situation at hand, and thank you. And that's why I'm seconding it.
Good, thank you. County Attorney, we need to address the motion as far as being made.
Yes,
with
sir. Mr.
acceptance.
Chairman, just to clarify, the motion is to set the second public hearing, June 22nd at 9:30 a.m., at which time you will make a final decision on the application.
So the
That's our
motion maker
motion.
agrees?
Second?
And we have a motion, we have a second, Commissioner Wayne. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing number 4. Let them clear out for a second, Amanda, so you're not distracted. We have some left quiet, and we have one that stormed out. Thank you. One more trip? Okay. Wait for the court reporter to finish up. Great. Public hearing number 4, Amanda.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Amanda Swindle with the Lee County Attorney's Office. I have your 4th public hearing, which is to adopt amendments to the Land Development Code regarding our dock and shoreline regulations. This is a fairly comprehensive rewrite of our dock and shoreline regulations in conjunction with industry trends within the marine construction industry. DCD staff, particularly Adam Mendez, worked very closely with interested parties within the marine construction industry to develop these regulations. They have been heard by our 3 advisory boards, and they have recommended approval.
Thank you. At this time, we have some public comment on this, unless the staff on board has any questions. No. Okay, move to public comment. Joe Mazurkowitz? Joe still here? Brett Stalls? I believe it says Brett Stalls.
Stokes. Yep.
Stokes? Okay, I couldn't read it. Stokes. After Brett, we have Dan.
Good afternoon, Brent Stokes. I own Stokes Marine, local marine construction company.
also a waterfront Lee County resident myself. I appreciate the effort staff's put into this. There's some significant changes that are real positive. However, there's a couple main concerns that, quite frankly, in my opinion, outweigh any of the positive changes. Two big issues. We're creating setbacks on on artificial waterways, side setbacks for dock structures, and we've not had side setbacks for the 20 years that I've been in business in this county, and it's not been a problem. Occasionally we have customers with ingress egress concerns, view corridor concerns, but at the end of the day we do permits in multiple other local municipalities, and most of them have a side setback, and we have just as many problems in those municipalities and concerns from residents and neighbors as we do in the county without them. So my suggestion is that adding a side setback isn't going to alleviate that. I'm also concerned with the way the side setback was derived. It doesn't have anything to do with navigation. A side setback that matches an accessory structure to a home on the uplands doesn't have anything to do with a boat pulling in and out of a slip. They're completely unrelated. Quite frankly, I find it embarrassing to have to describe to a waterfront property owner that that's how the side setback was derived. Another big concern is we're limiting the docks to 2 docks. Right now, residents can have more than 1 dock. If you have an intersecting canal, maybe you have a dock on each side. If you have a concrete cantilever dock that's existing, that was put in and incorporated with part of the seawall at one time, and I'm gonna go and build a fixed wooden dock, do I now have to incorporate that dock where the cantilever dock is? I can't build my new dock on a different part of my property, because that'll leave me with 2 docks. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not been a problem. I don't know what the problem is that we're trying to correct with making that change. Lastly, number of slips. The revisions are proposing to limit the number of slips. It's always been limited to 2 on the natural waterway. It's never been limited to 2 on artificial canals. I'm not sure what the problem is we're trying to fix there either. There's been a bunch of comments from staff about the manatee protection plan. By the same token, the manatee protection plan is nearly 20 years old, and we've got numerous permits that are issued with over 2 slips, and it's been a non-issue. There's comments in the manatee protection plan that reference anything less than 5 slips is approvable. So the restriction to 2 slips is not necessary. It's going to get a lot of pushback from customers. We've got numerous customers out there with more than 2 slips at their docks. Some other logistical things in here, more Scribner's errors and detail stuff. I'll follow up with the email to the commission.
Thank you. Next speaker, Dan Stovall.
Gentlemen, my name is Dan Stovall from Haunch Docks and Lifts. I'm the president of the company. I think a little bit of history about how we got to this point. Several years ago, I don't know if county approached me or if I approached the county, but we said, hey, we want to try to line this up with the state and federal regulations on our land development code. Okay, so what had happened was when they put these regulations in place 20 some odd years ago, they applied the aquatic preserve rules to every natural part of Lee County. So we delegate between Lee County natural water and Lee County man-made canals when we write our rules for our land development ordinance. Well, what's happened here is they're starting to try to somehow align themselves with the state and federal permits, but they're kind of overstepping some of what we believe the interpretation of the rules are, okay? So, first of all, the staff originally, they did a great job with this thing. I mean, they came to us, they sat down with us, they asked our input. This was a several-year process, and they did a great job of listening to what we needed. But I do agree with Brent in that there's a couple of things here where what we're gaining is not what we're paying for. I mean, it would be better to keep it the way it is or try to send this thing back for us to talk about a little bit more than to approve it the way we have. And there's 2 main points that I want to make on this. This idea that we can only have 2 boat slips on a man-made canal is a huge detriment to Lee County residents, okay? You're having somebody that's moving down here from up north. They just bought a brand new boat. They probably have a boat that they brought with them from up north, brought it down here. They come to me, say, hey, can I build a dock? Yes, you can. How many slips can I have? Well, you know, right now, if you're on natural water, we can give you 2. If you're on a man-made canal, we can give you 3 or 4. So this guy has me build 2 slips, calls me back a year later and says, hey, Dan, my grandkids are coming down here, using it more than we thought we would. I'd like to have a flats boat for my grandkids to go out into the river and catch snook. I have to tell him, no, we can't do that if this passes. Currently, I can do that for him. He's going to say, well, hold on, my neighbor has 3 slips. My other neighbor has 4 slips. Yes, they do. Well, why can't I have it? Well, 2022, we changed this thing. And I don't understand why we're going this route, okay? The MPP says that we are allowed a certain number of slips for residential properties and a certain number of slips for commercial properties. It's done on a linear footage of property. Well, the simple fact of the matter is, if the goal is to align this thing with the MPP, I can show you a state and federal permit I get every day for 3 or 4 boat slips for residential property in Lee County. So why are we saying we need to align it with the MPP, which is a federal grant, a federal ruling, and then tell me now, hold on here, Dan, I can give you a permit for 3 or 4 boat slips? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, your 3 minutes is up. Thank you, though. We got to the point where we're going to get some answers to your questions. I have a card here from a Steve Gagnon. It doesn't say what item. Steve is still here? Yes, sir. Are you speaking on this item, or you never put a number? No, sir. I'm not in blue. I'm sorry?
I have a completely new topic. Oh, public presentation.
Okay. You put public hearing. That's what I was asking. This is the last public hearing, so, okay. Thank you. Now, on this topic, this is not about the Land Development Code, no. So any other public comments on public hearing number 4? We'll come back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm not ready to move forward with this then today in light of the comments that we've received. So I'd love to ask maybe our county attorney, somebody to give us some options. Do we remand this back to committee? How do we get some of these amendments reviewed and looked at?
Mr. Chairman?
Richard, go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. If that's the board's sentiment, then I would respectfully suggest that it be sent back to staff to get with the individuals that spoke and perhaps flesh out these issues, make a recommendation to you at some point in the future. Again, for advertising purposes, I would request that you continue this to a time and date certain. You have either the second meeting in June, which will also be your second Old Corkscrew Plantation application, or carry it forward to your August 2nd meeting. And in light of the 17th agenda, you may want to push it to the August 2nd meeting at 9:30 a.m.
So articulate a motion then for me that pushes it to the August meeting and remands it back to staff for further review.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
A motion to direct that this matter be, the public hearing be continued to August 2nd, 2022, 9:30 a.m., and direction to staff to work with the speakers to develop the issues for possible resolution. I think that would be sufficient.
Okay, that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Second it.
I'm going to support the motion. I have a question. Maybe, I don't know if your office or the community development can answer the questions. I'm not really sure why would somebody want more? Currently, you can have multiple docks or slips on a current residential lot, but why would anybody want more than 2 or 3 now? I mean, it's just, is the limit based upon feet of frontage currently? Because if you have an 80-foot lot, I'm just, for reasons I'm just not sure, and I know I'm not familiar with that, so I'm just not sure why would somebody want more than 2 or 3 slips? And is there, currently now you can have as many as you want, if it's based upon the square footage, if you can fit 4 or 5 docks in your backyard?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to DCD staff.
Okay. Is it going to be Dave or somebody else? Okay. Just curious, I think we should give some direction to the staff other than just meeting with the speakers. They can meet with them, but I'm going to support the motion. I'm just curious how the staff came up with that and with the purpose of that reasoning.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Yes.
I think it's
Is why we're here today, why we're having to look at this after all these years.
Dave Loveland, Community Development. So working with Natural Resources staff in crafting these, the Manatee Protection Plan assumes 2 slips per a single-family lot. So that restriction is built in to the Manatee Protection Plan already. The reference to, single-family being exempt from Manatee Protection Plan review, that's why. It's already built in. But there are provisions that are included in this language that would allow a property owner to get a deviation from that requirement, ask for more. We certainly are willing to sit down with Mr. Stovall and Mr. Stokes and continue to talk through this issue and see if we can come to some resolution.
I was just finding out why it came up to reduce it to 2, to actually identify 2, unless they, like you said, go back for a deviation. It'll be administrative, I guess. They would have to ask if they have, say, 400 footage of waterfront, they could ask for more than 2.
Right. There's administrative deviation process. It was always limited to 2 since the Manatee Protection Plan was put in place. The idea that, I think what we were doing was clarifying that that's intended to apply in all instances, because that wasn't clear in the language that we had before.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay. We have a motion for a second. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. We're back to August 2nd. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrea Fraser from the County Attorney's Office. I have your number 5 public hearing. The affidavit of publication is sufficient, and I will provide it to the clerk for incorporation into the minutes. At this time, Commissioners, we're asking for a continuation of this public hearing until August 2nd at 9:30 a.m. You are free to take public comment if you would like, but we're just asking for a continuation at this time.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to continue. Any public comment on the motion? Being none, we'll come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries to August 2nd. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, we're back to welcome carriers. We do not have any commissioner items. Commissioner Hammond.
Had none this morning?
You have none? Commissioner White? I have none. Okay, I just wanted to share with the board, I think you received, if not, I will give you a copy of the letters. We had, the board agreed last month to send a letter to the other counties of the RPC delegation about the county's position as far as the RPC's request to continue their process and to also come to our board meeting to respond for support of funding. If you did not receive by email, you have a hard copy now. This is Charlotte County and Sarasota County's response. They were concurrent with ours as far as being consistent, and they also agreed to, they're going to make it a priority, the legislative process also, to help make sure we are preempted from mandatory funding for the RPC for the future. And I'm sure this discussion will continue with the RPC, which is they're trying to find, other than grant funding, right now they're basically surviving on grants, working from home. And I'm also going to be looking in the future of what grants they're looking at, to maybe we can also, if there are duplication of county services, maybe we can apply for the same grants since we have staff and the ability to actually utilize those grants opportunities more than they can based upon the current situation. Collier County has not responded yet. Commissioner McDaniel is their representative on that board. In the future, when we have further future meetings with RPC, I will keep you updated in my attendance of what's going on with that.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Any questions or anything about that? Nope. Good. And you also have a copy from our original. Okay. And committee appointments. Commissioner Hammond.
I have one reappointment this morning to the Roadway Landscape Committee. It's Gregory DeSario.
Motion. We have a second. Any public comment on that? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner Wayne, do you have any appointments?
I do not.
I have one, so I'm going to need a motion and a second. Reappointment of Debbie Hughes for Roadway Landscaping.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. County manager items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing further today.
Great. County attorney?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Guys are quiet today. Okay. This time we'll take public comment from matters concerning citizens. Stephen Gagnon. You're here regarding the hangar project.
Yes, sir. I represent, I'm president of EAA 66. I just wanted to introduce myself to you. We are presently trying to do a hangar project to expand our property on Pagefield. We've had 3 hangar projects going in the past, but they all got terminated for some reason. The last one because the gentleman spearheading it died, and it wasn't carried on. And we can't finance a project. We have to have the money before we can go. And several years ago, we met with Scott Sheets at the airport, and he said, "When you got the money, come and talk to me." So in February, we went to talk to him, had the money. Haven't heard a word since. But imagine it's going to come to you sooner or later. It's going to I'm now addressing the Port Authority, I believe, not the county commissioners. I'd like to ask you of two things. Number one, I'd like to keep the lease that we have on our current building the way it is. And I'd like to be able to build a 50 by 50 hangar on the property that we have. And I'd also extend an invitation to you, if you want to see what we do young eagle flights. We did 12 young eagles last Sunday. We do an average of 400 young eagle flights a year. We've done over 2,200 young eagle flights. That's where we take kids that are between the ages of 10 and 17 and give them their first airplane ride and teach them that they can learn to fly if they wish. And it introduces them to the world of aviation. And that's our primary function as far as the kids go. We also have build night where we're educating people on how to build airplanes. Imagine that, we're building airplanes in Page Field. And the other thing is I'd like to invite you to come to our first Sunday of every month. It's when we have our Young Eagle activities, and we have a breakfast at the same time. It's an all-you-can-eat breakfast. It's modest, but it's $8, and it's pretty nice to have. But we'd like to extend the invitation for you. There's one more thing. There's an airplane called the Spirit of Fort Myers that was built by the original president of EA 66 back in 1957. It wound up in a museum in Lakeland, and they sold it off to somebody who's, it's gone. It's now possessed by a young lady who wants to donate it to the Imaginarium in Fort Myers. And when it gets down here, we've told the gentleman there that we would like to come and help him assemble the airplane and put it on display. I'd like to invite you gentlemen to come and for a photo opportunity. Hey, here it is coming back to Fort Myers. It's just a bit of history that's coming back to Fort Myers. It's been here around for a long time, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming down. And if as you sit down, I got taking your information off your card, and we'll get it to our assistants. But in the future, if you want to come to a little bit shorter meeting, if you come to our Port Authority meetings, we'll be addressing Port Authority issues. But thank you for doing business at Pagefield, and we'll make sure all our assistants, and including our water pilot here, Ray Sindel, to get your information. I'm sure he'll be coming out to visit you. So thank you. Any other public comment at this time? We'll come back to the board, and we'll motion to adjourn. Good. See you June 22nd.